Welcome back to Patman Garage. So we're jumping right back into working on the 94 Lightning, and that is Coyote swapped, and we got some new goodies to play with. Well, we're back at digging into the Lightning, and I'm telling you, man, this is a sweet gig. He sent some more parts over to the house, so I've got a box sitting here with some new gauges, and we're gonna install a water temp gauge and a transmission temperature gauge. We might have to order some fittings for the transmission side so we can use the 8AN adapters on the transcooler, but shouldn't be a big deal. But we're going to open the box and dig into it and see what we got in store for us. All right, so we have a glow shift gauge. This is the transmission gauge. So it's black face and it's backlit. It's kind of hard to see in the box, but I guess you can see that there. And then we have a water temp gauge, same matching one. And then we've got a generic pillar mount. It's going to fit, well, I guess not quite too generic, but it will fit the pillar. And we got some wiring and some invoice stuff. So we're going to get this thing set up and laid out on the truck and see what we're looking like. All right, so I got the fitting from Summit. It's just a generic 8AN with the 1/8 27 NPT threads in it. So this is the adapter piece here, and the threads are going to be on the top side there. So we'll thread in the temp sensor into it, and then we'll run the wires for the trans gauge from here, and then the water gauge. He's got a steam pipe delete kit, which has the bleeder screw on it, and this brass lower half should be the same 1/8 27 NPT that we have for the sending unit. So we should be able to just thread this guy out, thread the sending unit into it, and then we'll run both the wires back that way somewhere into the cab. We'll get the pillars mounted, the gauges mounted on the pillar after that. So there's our temp sender. So it's threaded NPT. So being a national pipe thread, we should not need any sort of Teflon because it's a compression tapered fit. So this guy should just go right in the top of our new adapter here. Should. Wires are kind of hanging up on it. All right, I got it threaded in, so we're gonna get these wires routed across and tucked up out of the way, and so we'll have basically a ground and a positive, or a ground and a resistor, or however they're exactly wired up. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but that's gonna be the setup for the transmission, and then we'll get the coolant one done. Well, that's a bummer. So I pulled the bleeder off, and I started the new temp sensor in there, and I got like a quarter of a turn on it, and then it wanted to strip out. So whoever installed this guy and did the original NPT tapped it too far down. So we can either we'll probably just buy a new water tap, or the water neck. They're pretty cheap, and at this point, I don't know that I would trust running this guy as is. You can see how loose it is, even with it all the way down. I don't know that I trust that guy anymore, even if so like on my truck, I tapped off to the side over here, but yeah, so we'll just add that to the list, grab another water neck, and get that swapped out, but that'll slow us down a little bit today, but we still got plenty to do on wiring. And here we are yet again with another new box with more new parts in it. So this is a coolant reservoir for the overflow tank, which I talked him into buying off of Amazon. And this is my size I was using to figure out how big where and how we were going to put it in the car. And they're almost the same size. So that was pretty neat. And that'll replace this entire tank here. He's not using washer side, and we'll replace this whole big giant box, which was only held on by one little bolt there. And I think we're going to try to go just on the other side of this bracket right in here. And we'll get a hose around for that and get it mounted and all that. But we got to get this big guy out of here and figure out how exactly we're going to mount this. And then we're going to cut off whatever part of this we don't need, because that's I assume that's the original air filter housing box bracket, but don't know that 100%, but I'll show you with the tank removed. This looks like a complete eyesore. So we'll get the tank out of here and figure out how we can get this guy mounted up. Well, my apologies. I got a little excited and went ahead and cut this cutout before I showed you what it looked like. So I'm going to back up here. You can kind of get an idea of what that would have looked like without the tank there. So I drilled a hole in the corner here, and the bottle is going to just sit on that little bit of a pedestal like that, and then we'll put the hose clamp around it that it came with, and we'll move on to the next part of this project. So my bad, I feel kind of bad that I didn't get to, I kind of jumped the gun without grabbing the camera, but I apparently got a little too excited to get the saw out again. But I did want to take the opportunity to say thank y'all for watching some of these videos, and make sure that you're subscribed and all that good stuff so you don't miss out on more of them if you want to. I really do appreciate y'all watching the videos, and we'll get back into the project. So that turned out really sharp. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. There's just enough space to get the cap off, so no issues hitting on the underside of the fender there. So that's nice. You can check the fluid level, and really cleaned up how this all turned. All this looks really sharp with the bracket deleted out of here, and obviously the big atrocious bottle makes this all look really sharp. So I'm happy with this. I'm sure he will be happy with this. And then we can finish finalizing the gauges install. So back out in the garage, and I picked up a new water neck because the one that's on the Lightning was all stripped out. So we're going to get the new one modified to accept our pipe threads. So I got the tap and die set out, and if you watch the video on this for how to modify this from Powered by the Hour, I believe is the video I've seen, they talk about removing the stem out of this that's pressed in. Well, if you buy a new one, it comes already modified with it already removed. So we should be able to just tap straight into that without drilling it, and then then we can thread in the temp sensor into that. So I'm gonna get this set up in the vise, and then we'll run the tap in it and see how we do. Set up in the vise, and we have our 1/8 inch NPT 27 threads, and that should just tap right into the top of this guy. So I'm going to get working on that, and then we'll see how the results end up. So if you've never done a tap before, they're not particularly fun or glamorous, but what you should know is you want to do about a half a turn on and then back a quarter turn off, and that'll just help clear out the chips in it. So as you are driving this guy on, you're actually cutting new threads way down in here. Kind of hard to see. And as you do that, you want to kind of back off, and that'll just help make sure there's nothing in the tap that's going to mess up your forward motion. And just keep working it in. Back it off a little bit more. So on and so forth. And this being a NPT, which is a tapered thread, what I want to do is kind of, once I feel like I've got a decent bite down into it, which I'm pretty much there, I'm going to back this tool completely out, and then we'll put the temp sensor back in it and see how much actual threads penetration we have on it, and figure out if that's going to be enough to be snug. And we can always cut more if we need more. Trying to get the camera to focus on my new threads in here, but you can kind of see the idea here, and we'll get the temp sensor slid in there and see what happens. So this should be getting snugger as we go down because it's tapered. So it should feel tighter as we go. So eyeballing it, it looks like we probably should go a little bit more. And we just barely have the tip of the sending unit in the water at that end. So yeah, I definitely would like a little bit more in there. So we need to cut about maybe another 2 turns or so, and then we'll retest it. Well, that is looking nice and flush in there. We're happy with that. And we got pretty good penetration down in it. So we'll get this guy swapped over, and we'll be ready to finish wiring up the gauges from there. Alright, I got the old one out. I figured I'd kind of show you a little bit of what I did here. So I drained the coolant. I got about that much out of it, which was, I stopped the stream because I was running out of room in the bottle. And then I pulled the quick connect hose clamp off of this guy here, which goes to the thermostat on the little water neck. And that allowed me to slide the assembly over and up enough where I could get the actual water neck off the top of it. So we're going to reverse these steps and go back on with it. Something like that. And then we'll get this guy lined back up down here on this guy. Trying to do this one hand is always fun. So we're going to get this guy popped back down, and then we'll get the bolt started and then slide our clamp on. And these are 8mm bolts, and as per a million times in all my other videos, you always want to get everything started before you start snugging stuff down. So I've got both of the bolts threaded in, and that just assures that we get it actually lined up correctly, and we don't end up having to start over by loosening another bolt to just to then retighten it. And these don't have to be crazy tight, they're just snug. It's a small bolt. And then we'll get the hose clamp slid back on it, and we're ready to put coolant back in it. Welcome back to Patman Garage. Late night working on the Lightning. It is supposed to be going home today, and of course wouldn't have it any other way, but having more issues last night. So I was poking around under the truck, and the ground wire for the fuel pump looked a little undersized, and I was kind of feeling for it, see if it was getting warm or hot or whatever, and I wiggled it, and then it like arced and sparked at me, And then I pulled the truck in the garage to take a look at it and see if I can maybe fix it. And hitting the bump going into the garage, the truck died. So that was originally one of his complaints, was hitting bumps and the truck dying. I never could duplicate it when I test drove it at the beginning of the year. So I believe that's probably a lot of his issues. So I went ahead and replaced built a new ground wire and replaced it. I did not shoot video because it was super late last night and most of it was in the dark. But I'll throw up some pictures here so you can see that. And we're gonna take it for another test drive. I did get the gauges wired up. I never could get the transmission to come up to temperature, so we may still have a little bit of tweaking to do with that. But we'll get this thing out on the road and see how she does. All right, so this is the ground wire off of the truck, and I'm gonna very carefully cut it open so that we can see what's going on with it inside. But it looks like there's quite a bit of wire damage just off the crimping section here. So I had it slit open here, but actually the wires were really not even connected at all. They were just kind of touching in there. And you can see the crimp itself wasn't ever done correctly either. So whoever built this did not build this correctly, and not to mention it's undersized for the wiring needs for that fuel pump, but yeah, that was just literally just barely connected in there. I'll slide under the truck and show you the new ground wire here. So this is the new ground wire. It's probably about a 10 gauge or so. It's pretty beefy. And if you look up here, you can see there you go. If you look up here, you can see the matches the diameter of my power wire. So it's either a 10 or 12, I don't know, just eyeballing it, but much bigger than that 18 gauge plus a broken crimp. So should be in good shape there. And he was also complaining about the noise of the fuel pump. It's an externally mounted fuel pump, so there's no fuel internal in the tank that's isolating some of the sound and absorbing some of the sound. So not a whole lot we can do with the noise part of it, but I wanted you to at least kind of see what's going on underneath here. So hopefully quick recap of everything we did on this truck. So we started with battery, replacing the battery, replacing the cable ends with newer Motorcraft style, and adding a ground wire from the battery to the frame. I did a little bit of wire management, cleaning up in this area just to make it look a little nicer. We added the UPR catch can. Coming over here, we made the kickstand for the air filter, modified the power steering bracket. We added a Amazon special coolant reservoir and deleted the big giant tank box that was here. And then we replaced the water neck here, added a temp sensor here, and then added a temp sensor for the trans cooler up in there. And both of those are going to go to our new gauges. And our new gauges look pretty sweet. Match the factory gauges for the most part. There's lights on, so they dim slightly at night. See if I can pick that up. So overall, and they're color changing too, which is kind of cool, but I'm going to leave them on green. That's my favorite color, and I think they look good matching the matching those gauges like that. But overall, I think we got everything sorted out. And then so of course, after doing gauges, then we got to play with the fuel pump grounding issue, which ultimately I think was the original symptom or complaint or whatever you want to call it. So we're in really good shape there. Oh, not pictured, but I also replaced the upper ball joints and hardware for that as well. I don't think I really did a video on those. But yeah, we just did a little bit of everything on this truck, gave it some TLC, gave it some little Patman love, and I'm excited that he's going to get his truck back, and excited to see what comes home with me next. So we'll go take it for a quick test drive again and just make sure everything's working right before he comes and picks it up. And yeah, I'll take you out for a ride. Well, it might not show up on camera very well, but I've got my laptop running 4Scan so I can watch real-time sensors on the transmission and engine just to verify my operation on my gauges, since when I drove it last night I could not get the coolant temperature to, or when I drove it last night I could not get the transmission to come up at all on the gauge. So we'll get this thing up to temperature, and hopefully the thermostat for the transmission opens up, and then we can get some better readings on our gauges. What a beautiful day to be out driving a Lightning. Still trying to get the transmission up to temperature. Laptop is showing 92 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry, 92 degrees Celsius, which is like 185-ish or something like that. Not quite 200 yet. So we'll keep driving it. because I respect the truck, respect the build, and it's not mine to break. So just out driving it around. Did get a mid-throttle a couple times. But it's definitely responsive. Said hopefully we'll get this thing up to temperature here shortly. So I got the truck idling. I got the transmission fully warmed up. It's at 91 degrees Celsius, which is like 100 or right at 200 degrees, I think. And my transmission gauge is barely moved at all. And I think the gauge is just barely moved because it is on the cold side of the cooler. So I'm going to move my sending unit and adapter to the warm side of the cooler. See if I can get a little bit different reading. Maybe be a little bit more gauge movement than just just barely off of the 50 degree mark. So he's got a big, it looks like an F250 transcooler, but he's got a big transcooler on here. And with the electric fans running, it's got a lot of air moving across it as well. So we'll get the sending unit moved over to the hot side and see how we do.